Thank you for the excellent introduction. I am, as they say, Rachel Lee Nabors. And I gotta be honest, I don't want to actually give this talk today. I didn't want to give this talk. I planned to give a talk about organizational change. And I didn't get to do that because, well, things happen. I'd rather you not remember me as the bummer layoff speaker, because whatever talk you give is how people are going to remember you for the longest dang time. So unfortunately, for some of you who are meeting me for the first time, you're meeting me under these conditions. I would have rather talked about shipping React.dev when I was on React Core. That work landed me a really cool role as head of developer education at AWS Amplify. That would have been a much cooler talk. But unfortunately, I have been impacted by layoffs at AWS. Now, impacted by layoffs is the new sanitized way of saying getting laid off. Notice that there's no subject and object in that sentence. It's been super sanitized, so nobody's, oh, hold on a minute. There seems to be technical difficulties here, folks. Oh my God, is it doing that directional thing? Yeah. It's because I put it on myself. I'm sorry, I should have let you do it.
There we go.
Thank you, appreciate it. Is that better? Oh, that is better. Damn. Okay, that's good because my start was a little bit, I always get a little spindly-legged at the beginning. I gotta warm up to you, you gotta warm up to me. It's a give and a take, right? All right, so I was impacted by layoffs, which is a nice way of saying that the company overhired people in the fever dream that was the pandemic, and then they sent away a lot of workers because they had too many. I also happen to be writing a book on how to survive your big tech career, because I've been at Microsoft, I've been at Meta, I've been at AWS, and I was going to go for Netflix and Google too, but after all these layoffs, I'm thinking maybe not. I'm writing the book in public. You can follow along on my Substack. This is one of the last chapters that I wanted to write, but I wanted to share it here with you because we're all going through this time of uncertainty together, and this information is super actionable for you, and it might just save you a lot of grief. So, repeat after me. There's a couple of concepts I want you to take with you going forward. Number one, it's like a breakup. Great. Number two, always negotiate. Say it with me. Always negotiate. And lastly, it's not your fault. Brilliant. Love it. So right now, many of us are sitting with uncertainty, like an axe hanging over your head. Either you have been laid off, put your hand up. Keep it up. You've lost a team member to a layoff. Or you're afraid of being laid off. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of fear and uncertainty in the room. Thank you all. So there's an art to sitting with this unease. First off, let's talk about the difference between layoffs and firings, because there's a lot of misunderstandings here. I was a farm kid. I raised chickens, and I realized that companies run a lot like farms, and you are the chicken. We would sometimes cull birds to remove the birds that didn't have the traits that we wanted. The egg-laying hen who didn't lay enough eggs, the meat bird that didn't get big enough, fast enough, right? And we would analyze each individual bird. But sometimes we had to thin the flock, like when grain prices went up, and we knew we wouldn't have enough money to feed enough birds to last long enough. We'd just have to get the numbers down. So in this way, business is the same. Performance-based firings are a lot like culling. They happen on a recurring basis, usually using review cycles as a pivot point. Managers inspect and decide who's going to stay and who's going to go. Sometimes they use this dirty word called stack ranking. Don't let people use that word when they mean prioritization. It's a word that has to do with routinely getting rid of the lowest performers. We'll talk about that in a future chapter. And lastly, the nice thing is, unlike chickens, if you're lucky, you get a performance improvement plan, which as much as we hate the way that sounds, it is a second shot at getting to stay and keep your job. Although after you've been on a performance improvement plan, you might have second feelings about your manager. Layoffs are a little different. They happen according to market predictions, profitability, and investor confidence, all things you have no control over. You can only control yourself in any situation, and layoffs are not something you have any control over. You don't control how the market's doing or what the investors are thinking. They are indiscriminate. Algorithms are making this call. Managers aren't usually giving feedback or input. It's usually a spreadsheet and HR going through and going, this role, this tenure, this price, and crossing people off that way. It's a call. Every 10th cow gets put into a different pen. And there's no getting out of it, because if you could negotiate your way out of it, if you could talk to your manager and convince them that you shouldn't be a part of this cull, then every manager would be hassling their VP or their HR person trying to keep their teams. They don't want to let you go either. So it's a really sad situation that you don't have any control over. Layoffs are to be expected in any company of a certain size, a certain age, and a certain economic climate. However, these layoffs are built different. Let's take a look. First off, there's no relationship to performance, but performance pressures tend to increase just before they hit at most organizations. So there's a lot of pressure on everyone to try harder and perform harder, even though it has no real impact. There's top-down secrecy. Leadership knows sometimes only hours or a few days before it happens. Your manager might think everything is fine, and it's not. They're actually in grave danger of losing a large chunk of their team. And naive leadership, because we've been having it so good for so long in tech. A lot of these big companies like Meta, they've never done layoffs like this before. They're suddenly like, whoa, oh my God, we're doing a layoff? I didn't know. And they are not prepared to defend their org like a more experienced, perhaps IBM VP or director would be. And this is the part that really clinches it. Employees are often learning that they've been impacted, laid off, when their devices stop working, when you get bricked. Can't log in. Suddenly you're like, whoa, you check your personal email and there's a, hi, thanks, sorry, no. Yeah. Because of the way these things roll out in waves, the fear and anxiety they inflict as entire teams go silent and orgs darken, I call them blackout layoffs. Because they're like rolling blackouts. You're always wondering when the next one's gonna hit. They come in waves and you just have to wait them out. Just a reminder, none of this is your fault. None of these things are within your control. So, there are two workers' responses that I have noticed. The denial or the table flip, as I call it. Denial, you're going to hear this. You're going to hear trusting phrases like, you know, leadership has our backs, and confidence that that sort of thing wouldn't happen here. Stalling, you know, no, I'm not gonna look for a new role. I'm happy with where I am, which is like the worst response ever. I have an entire chapter about why you should always be interviewing on principle. And lastly, there is this belief that if I just work harder, it won't get me. Remember, it's not performance-based. You work harder, you're not getting anything for that. And then there's the table flipping. This looks more like uneasiness, you know, wondering if it could happen here, questioning, not listening necessarily to the placations coming from leadership, active, you know, they're updating their resume, getting ready, and even sometimes hostility, threatening, you know, like, I'd quit if anyone ever did that to my team. So these are two kinds of responses that humans exhibit in response to stress. There's freeze and fawn, and there's fight or flight. Now, fawning and fighting aren't gonna work. Leadership can't help you, and appealing to them or lashing out is an utter waste of your time, so don't spend energy on that. The only two responses you need, and I'm not gonna waste your time talking about how you should be angry or fight something that you can't hit. You can't hit a spreadsheet. I have tried. Nor am I going to encourage you to ingratiate yourself to the powerless. You can freeze. This is actually your best option. Hold the line, get what's yours, set the pace, don't burn out. Or you can fight, you can leave ahead of the rush. If you've got a great opportunity, I encourage it. Do not exhibit loyalty to a company that has no loyalty to you. We live in America. It's an at-will working country. One thing you can do while you're in freeze mode and you're not doing anything, maybe you don't think you're gonna get laid off, but you should always have a career go bag at your disposal. Even if you don't feel at risk, I recommend you put one together. We put together go bags for earthquakes and fires, things that can help you in an emergency situation. You tuck them under your bed. It's got a bottle of water, a first aid kit, etc., just in case. Career go bags are similar. What you put in here instead of a bottle of water is your I was laid off post. You want to write that before you're triggered and unhappy, because trust me, it sounds way more graceful when you write it from a place of ease and happiness with your team, and you're not like, my manager did what? Letters of recommendation to and from your colleagues. You should be working on these as you go through your career anyway, but the idea is you want to, like, if you've delivered something together, you high five, LinkedIn recommendation. Write the numbers, write the when and where and who. But you definitely want those. An updated financial plan. while you have income, get a financial planner. Say, what would happen if I didn't have this income for 6 or 12 months? Let's make a plan for that. Let's really look at the assets and what would have to happen. This way, you're not doing it when you've got all the adrenaline going through you and you're trying to figure out how to sign up for Cobra. An inventory of your assets, real and intangible. You might not realize this, but like you have intangible assets. I don't have a big family. I'm always envious of how my friends who have relations they can rely on to help them out in a crisis are able to flex and live through difficult times that for me, I have to buy my way out of. You know, I have to hire movers. If I had kids, I would have to find a way to send them to daycare. You might have people in your life who can help you in a crisis. So count the intangible things. Even your cat or your dog is giving you emotional support. It's a good way of counting your blessings. And if you can swing it, cash to cover 6 to 12 months expenses. I know it sounds like a lot. That's why you go to the financial planner. You figure out exactly what you need to get through a crisis time. It's a little cold out there. You want to make sure you can endure the winter. You may be tempted to rage quit now to get out of that discomfort. Some companies, they like to turn on the squeeze, but sit tight. You can hold the night. You are currently in a game of chicken with your company, waiting to see who is going to give up first. But here's the deal. You stick it out, you're guaranteed to get the better deal. A gentle reminder again, layoff packages are almost always better than anything you can negotiate on your own. So you want to survive to the point where the layoffs officially come and you get that package. Now, for those of you who are not getting laid off, congratulations. Most of you in this room are going to keep your jobs. That's great news, right? Even if layoffs come to your company, you get to keep your jobs. So why are you here? The bad news is that your jobs now suck. As I like to say to the newly divorced, congratulations, I'm sorry. Some of your colleagues are gone. You didn't get to say goodbye to them. Your relationship is now awkward and different. You're like the family of their ex. You know, you still love them, but they're not welcome here anymore. You know, you can't hang out with them. It makes things weird. I recommend you get closure with that final cup of coffee. You always want a final cup of coffee with people in your life, even, you know, your exes and their family. You want to do the 3 C's. You want to offer comfort. You want to let them know that you see them. You see that they are, you know, that they are gone, and you saw that they did good work. You want to get clarity. You both want to discuss what just happened. It can be very confusing to suddenly have all the plates dropped. And you want to keep that connection. You want to let them know, I'm still here for you, because we all work in this industry together. You never want to cold cut someone off just because a company got in the way. That's a terrible burn of a connection. So you want to keep that. You may be experiencing something called survivor's guilt. This is when you believe that you've done something wrong by surviving a traumatic or tragic event when others didn't, which is where I remind you again that you did not do this. You could not stop this from happening unless you were a person on one of those shareholder boards or you were a VP or a C-level person, in which case, shame on you, we have words. You were acting irresponsibly. But you have to go on. Just remember, it's not your fault. And you're better off being at your best than wearing that necklace of shame. Best thing you can do is realign your North Star, rediscover your why, reconnect it with your work, and separate your work from your job. You don't want to mistake your company's goals for your purpose. This happens a lot. We get really enmeshed with our jobs. We're passionate people. We love what we do. We love our industry. We love our coworkers. But you need to start identifying as your own person right now, not enmeshing with your company identity, with your title, your corp, all of that. You know, it's like, oh, I'm a Googler, and Googlers, in the meantime, like hacking off people through a spreadsheet. Maybe you should be like, I'm a passionate UX designer. You know, that's a little better. So, Viktor Frankl, he's a Holocaust survivor. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. I highly recommend it. He writes of how surviving hardship is more about your why than your how. And finding your why is key to surviving through this. For me, my why is teaching the world to code so that they can have their own solutions and their own better life. I think that is something that people should be able to reach for and get for themselves. I don't need to be the expert. I want you to be the expert. Go build the future. And that helps me do my job and feel better about the work that I've done, even if I get laid off. So look beyond what the fallible humans are saying and doing, and look directly at the metal of the machine. How do you align your purpose with the machines? When you can find where your goals align to the company's core business, et cetera, and you move in that direction, you'll feel that you really did do your best. Now, your first warning sign might have been a hiring freeze, which meant fewer hands to do the same amount of work. Do not fall for this. This is a trap. You might hear do more with less. I encourage you to do less with less. The company knew it was depowering your mandate. It said this is not a priority. It should have fewer resources. The appropriate response is not to do more. No, it's to ask what you can stop doing. Get your leadership into a position where they are making these decisions with you. Sit your boss down and say, well, I know we had all these goals, but we thought we would have 2 more people, or we thought we'd still have Randy. He's gone. So I can give you 3 of them. Which 3? Which 3 matter? Make them draw the line. So this is my reminder to you. Always be negotiating. Negotiate here. Do not do the work of more people than you. There is nothing at this stage worth burning out for. There's nothing. Your reward for burning out isn't going to be a raise or a promotion. It's not even going to be keeping your job because that decision was predetermined. It's on a spreadsheet. Don't burn. It's a classic thing. Companies lay people off and they burn the remaining people, and then they hire new people when they've chewed up those. Don't fall for it. Hold the night. You're running a marathon here. You're in a game of chicken with the company. Don't let them burn you up. You're a person, not Tinder. So, I meant like Tinder for a fire, but I see where you're all going with that. Although, now that I think about it, companies are using the workforce a bit like Tinder these days. All right, for those of you in leadership roles, I'm very sorry. I hate this part. It sucks. I don't like this. Scarcity mindset prevalence is problematic. The people who can navigate blackout layoffs are not people I personally want on my zombie apocalypse team. Leaders in this thing. There's less of an appetite for risk, doing the right thing if it's not in alignment with how things are done according to plan. There's less trust, which means there's more conflict, there's more alliance building and backdoor dealing, and you really have to be a good politician to squabble over the remaining resources. This happens at a macroeconomic level too. I'm talking about how it impacts managers working with one another. And this, of course, results in the ultimate betrayal of trust, which is backstabbing. It's not fun. Your manager's probably going through a lot if they're dealing with people being laid off right now. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with them. This is tough on them too. Jeff Escalante, he's here speaking. He wrote a great article about how the prisoner's dilemma applies to politics in a company. And on a long enough timeline where most people start with a high trust situation, only the stabby will survive. You see that a lot at larger, more enterprise companies who've been around for many decades. But you're starting to see that the smaller companies that we know and love are, well, not smaller, but the younger companies are starting to learn this lesson too. So people change during breakups. Friends choose sides, kids get angry, the whole social system changes, and people's relationships at companies change too. So you have to wonder, and check that your relationship with folks is still the same as it was. I wrote a post about managing yourself through organizational change that gets into this a little bit. You can find it on my Substack. Let's move on. For everyone who's actually getting laid off, I mean people who are moving on, I'm sorry. It sucks. You lost so damn much. You no longer collect a paycheck and benefits. You're ostracized from the group of people that you interacted with for most of your waking life. And let's be honest, even though we say you should not treat your coworkers like family, they kinda are. They're at least the people you go hunting and fishing with and bring back food with at the end of the day. That is the role that they feel in your life. And you also probably had to drop a lot of things that you were working on and responsible for, and you feel intense shame and guilt and sadness that you had to do that, because how are they going to deliver without me? They'll find a way. Don't worry. Don't worry. But the good news is that you no longer live waiting for that other shoe to drop. You're no longer sitting in that particular puddle of anxiety. You got different anxieties now. But you get to get on with your life. You get to move on to other things, and you escaped the battle royale. Oh my God, that's the best one. You get to remain friends with most of the people that you got to work with. The same might not be said for the people who remain behind. But for you especially, this hurts because you are breaking up with your employer. Yeah. Imagine finding All the locks changed when you came home with a "it's not you, it's me" taped to the front door. No closure, just here's a box of your stuff, drop your laptop here. It can feel like being ghosted. I once again recommend that you get closure with the 3 C's, that final cup of coffee with your colleagues. Request comfort. It's okay to ask, please reassure me that we had a good relationship, that the projects I was working on are being taken care of. Get clarity on what just happened. Both of you probably have the same lack of what happened? And lastly, keep the connection. Reassure your friend that you'll always be on their meta team. If the same were to happen to them, you'd be there for them. You probably will work together again at some point in your careers. It's a small industry. So, reassure them you're looking forward to that day. Also, this is the best time for you to negotiate. Even if they are handing you a layoff package, now is the time to negotiate for extra time, health coverage, relocation forgiveness, keeping some of the bonus that you signed on with. You can ask questions. Like, what are they going to do? Fire you? I mean, they already played that card. Come on. They got no leverage. The least you can do is ask. I have a special ritual I recommend to feel like you have control at a time when you really don't have control. A ritual around loss. This ritual goes a little like this. First, you announce it to your circles. You keep it classy. Remember, your next manager is reading, and they are going to be judging you because they might have to lay people off at some point. So how you handle it says a lot about you, your character, and your bearings. This is why you write it ahead of being laid off. Also, by the way, pro tip, you just run your goodbye letter through ChatGPT and say, make this sound 70% more positive and professional. It just cleans that right up. You can write whatever you want. ChatGPT smooths out all the creases. Collect your belongings. I love this one because you're physically getting your life back and you are giving them all your responsibilities, laptop, lanyard, all the stuff, maybe a phone, and you're like, not my circus, not my monkeys, take it back. I love that part. That's the best part. And writing recommendations. Go ahead and ask your manager, and maybe your manager's manager, because they probably didn't want to let you go. They probably are willing to consider, if they liked working with you, a really nice recommendation. So go ahead and ask for it. And write recommendations for all the people you loved working with. Losing a job is a major loss. It's right up there with divorce and death, so don't treat it lightly. Make sure you take space for yourself. It's okay to be quiet for a while, to not be productive. You might feel this need to keep doing things because you're used to doing things. You're probably really pressured. It's all right. It's all right to just not do things for a little while. People ask me what I'm going to do next, and I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just going to conferences and high-fiving all my friends. Don't go it alone. It is not weak to ask for help. We identify a lot with our work. We are proud and we are passionate. Anybody would be shattered and demolished by a blow to something so core to their sense of self. Job loss is such a serious loss. I recommend finding supportive third party to talk with, not your partner. Trust me, you can burn out a relationship doing that. Find a supportive third party, maybe a therapist, a support group, even a religious guide. But somebody that you can talk through this with, because it can be hard to be dysregulated with everybody. Lastly, this is from my talk that I gave at You Got This Conf about how to always be interviewing for your next job. But I think it bears repeating that safety is an illusion. We enter into these jobs, we used to enter into these jobs with big tech companies and think this was like a career for life. We're a Googler, we're Amazonian, Microsofty. But on a long enough timeline, even at the best of years, those jobs end too. All jobs end. And this job, it's just another way of ending. And for everyone facing these changes, in this industry, there is only one constant, and that is that change is a constant. This situation, this uneasiness, this loss, it will change too. Unlike those chickens, you get to go on and live a new life. It's not the end for you. And to be honest, this is a really exciting time to have the impetus to dig into something new in this industry. I think it's big changes are just around the corner. So speaking of endings and new beginnings, you can check out my book at this URL right above. You will find all the templates for writing recommendations, etc., that I have recommended here. I hope you will check it out. Yeah. Oh wait, I should Oh, no. Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, the end.